Hello, and welcome back to Art Stream with Trey Gallaher. And tonight we're going to pick up with sort of where we left off last time. Was a little bit of creature design, starting with a skeletal study, of which last time I'd kind of began working on a couple of skulls using a feline cat skull as sort of reference, something somewhere not exact but pretty close to a lion and a little bit of a jaguar, which have very similar skulls, and sort of creating my own skull from references. And this time I had gotten started doing a little bit of the same skull 3/4. So if you could imagine this as being maybe something that would look maybe more like this, if you can see them next to each other, sort of see all three here. So you kind of get three views. And I decided to go ahead and start a 3/4 view like you're seeing here, and I just wanted to have that available, mostly because if you work it out, if you start drawing over the top with a skull straight on or from the side, it's the 3/4 that really sells it and really gives you that sense of dimension. So I decided to just go ahead and do the next 3/4 view, the in-between, if you will. Sometimes it's better to start straight on. Sometimes you're feeling it more from the side, or sometimes it's better to just start 3/4 because you just feel like you understand the dimension in your head. And I think it really just depends on what you're feeling and what you're seeing in your head. But I wanted this available if nothing else, so I went ahead and kind of took the information from the orthographics of being straight on or from the side profile and tried to do this 3/4 version. So I'm just sort of in the process now of finishing this up. And the last thing I kind of wanted to do was just put a little bit of tone for dimension, to push back certain edges and planes so that I know which ones are coming forward. I don't always start creatures this way. It's not like every time I begin I start this exact way. I don't. Sometimes it just comes to you in different visions and different ways of working, or just something you're feeling like at the time. Sometimes it's pencil and paper, sometimes it's paint, sometimes it's working digitally, sometimes it's working from life, sometimes it's out of your head. In this particular method, I'm working from the skull and the skeletal system kind of up. Now I teach life drawing and I teach anatomy, and one of the things that I have my anatomy students do is to work up a creature skeleton based off of a bipedal humanoid design. So after they've studied the human skeleton and the human muscle systems, they begin to create one of their own. And this is a good way to work, especially if you're going to do something more comprehensive and more thorough. If it's just loose sketching, it's not the fastest. But if you're thinking about something that could have more to it and feasibly go on to later stages of being sculpted or 3D modeled or something like that, then taking the extra investigation and the extra mile to break it down a bit more just gives you more information to work with. And again, a lot of the decisions you end up making are based upon real life considerations of proportion, anatomy, skeletal systems, muscle systems, and it just comprehensively makes your design feel a bit more possible, more realistic. So the last thing I'm kind of doing here after working up this 3/4 view is I just wanted to throw on a little dimension of the major shadow groups. Now, I'm not doing much with texture, and I'm not even really negotiating a lot of little subtle planes that are turning edges in here, and that's because I am planning to work with contours and the outside of the figure, the outside of the structure, more than the inside. So all I really need to know are proportional points. If I were going to go even farther with this, I suppose at some point I could navigate all the subtle planes and changes in surface texture of the skull. And maybe at some point I'll do that once I have my final design in place. I might come back to the bones. But at this point I just wanted to know some basic proportions and dimension. And that's all I really wanted, because again, I'm sort of designing from the outside, not the inside. But the inside does inform the outside. We look the way we look on the outside because of the structures that are underneath. So it's good to have an idea. So I'm just throwing on a little tone just to create a little sense of dimension. And then I'm going to go ahead and start sketching up some ideas based upon the structures and their proportions. All right, so there you go. There's third view, 3/4 view, and here's first, front, and side. So I have all three to complete the task. Just so you know what I'm referring to, it sort of all starts with a full skeleton, which is my ultimate goal, is to come back to the full body completed creature. So this is sort of where I'm starting, and the head studies are a little bit of a detail for purposes of maybe being inspired by figuring out what the head looks like first and then moving into the body. People work in different ways. Sometimes working from the body first tells you more about what the head might be. And sometimes, for instance, in character design or stylized character design for animation or comics or something like that, the stylization of the head might tell you what the rest of the body would look like. So it can kind of go back and forth. Body first, head first. Head first, body first. It's really can go either way. In creatures, I actually like to start with the body. And in characters, at least humanoid characters, I like to start with the head a bit more. But this is where our design started with, and this whole sort of project, this last couple of videos, last couple of streams, has been based upon looking at a feline anatomy and thinking along the lines of bigger felines, bigger cats, and studying a little bit of anatomy. I had lots of references, and this is sort of a little bit of a merger, and it's not the most detailed, but it's enough for me to proportionally work over the top. So speaking of working over the top, depending on how you want to design, one of the things I like to do is I like to take some marker paper, inexpensive marker paper. I don't think I would necessarily spend a lot of money, but I like the inexpensive marker paper, recycled marker paper, if you will. I'm kind of a particular fan of Canson. In particular, I like this stuff. This is Canson's marker paper recycled, which is a little bit of a better price usually than their regular mainstream mainline marker paper. This is recycled, so it's a little bit, I don't know. I can't tell the difference, to be honest. I've tested it. I can't even hardly feel the difference, but for the price difference, it's great. So but any kind of marker paper will be semi-translucent, give you a nice smooth surface, and can be a great surface to start, you know, sketching over the top. So I think in this case, what I'm going to start with here is, you can see that I've taken a sheet of the marker paper and I've taped it down over the top of my initial skull drawings, so that I've taped it across the top. And now, with the sort of translucency of it, I can begin to sketch over the top. Now, you might be asking the question, well, marker paper is kind of expensive to just sketch on. And that's very true. Marker paper is probably the more expensive of papers to use for something that's in pencil. But sometimes I feel motivated to take some marker and work with marker in addition to pencil, to help create value and tone and volume and dimension. I don't know if I'm going to do that now. At some point I might do that here, but at least I have a surface that will take marker. And if not, that's okay too. It's nice paper to work on and nice to draw on. And going with the recycled paper, not as expensive as the better quality marker paper. I suppose you could also use tracing paper. I personally feel that tracing paper is a little bit too transparent, but you could work up marker paper, tissue paper. There's different kinds of mixed media paper. Bienfang makes a really nice marker paper, translucent marker paper, rag paper, which you can kind of see also, but it's not super cheap either. So I think whatever would give you a little bit of that transparency and still take a variety of mediums. And I know that pencil and marker would be what I would probably mostly use at this stage of the game. So anyway, I thought I would kind of start here, and I don't necessarily know what I want. I'm just kind of starting out and figured that I would work up at least maybe one design tonight, maybe do something with the heads, and then if I like what I'm working with, I might try to put it back over the top of my full body here, which I would do the same thing with some marker paper over the top. So actually, before we get going too far, I think that I'll do that exact thing. I'm going to pull a sheet out of my pad, and I'm going to go ahead and tape it so that it's ready, so I don't have to do it later. And I might even do one for the 3/4, but for now. There we go. Streaming the late show again. Artist father. Streaming artist father means late at night. So we're back with the late show again. Still working on a time when I'll be streaming more regularly, at a regularly scheduled time, but right now things are a little hectic, so I've been having trouble getting consistent times. So I apologize if anybody out there is actually trying to catch me, because I realize I've been kind of inconsistent. But definitely it's going to be a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, and probably either early in the morning or late at night. So just keep your eyes peeled. You can always catch me at my website at treygallaher.com. You can catch me out on Facebook at Art by Trey Gallaher. You can catch me at Instagram at Trey Gallaher, no spaces. And you can catch me at my YouTube page, which is where a lot of these videos are rolling over onto my YouTube page. So you can catch me on YouTube, Trey Gallaher. So I'm out there. You can find these a lot of places. These videos are usually on Twitch for a while, and then they go to archive on YouTube. So if you don't catch them there, just if you don't catch them on Twitch, catch them on YouTube, because they will be going there afterwards. All right, I'm going to start with the front view, and I'm going to start drawing here. Let me just quick check, make sure everything looks straight. There you go. All right. So what do we know here? We've got a nasal passage. We've got eyes, ears. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a little bit of the nose. Now I'm figuring something that's probably by the way, this could also be started with blue pencil, and then you could always kind of clean it up with graphite. Sometimes I start that way, sometimes I don't, just kind of depends. I think when I'm doing more stylized character work, I like to work in blue pencil. I don't know why, if it's just the tradition of the animation blue pencil, but I always feel a little bit like that gets me in the right mental space. Or when I'm working on creatures in that sort of realism, I tend to work in graphite. But I think there's probably a lot more tonal work. Okay. So we figure that we're probably going to have some sort of bridge of the nose running this way, with some sort of muzzle. And I could do multiple versions of this thing, by the way. But I think at this point, I know there's going to be some sort of muzzle here. And probably a mouth. One of these higher cheekbones. And then probably some sort of jaw. Again, always good to have some references up. These things can be very helpful. Got a couple books open, just various things, from cats to dogs to, you know, all kinds of stuff. But you know, checking against reference and making sure you kind of know where things are and have an idea of what structures are doing definitely helps. Okay. So we got to figure that there's some sort of eye here. It's usually right about this time that I'm just relaxing, letting my mind wander. You know, when you're doing creative work and you're using this sort of side of your brain, I think you have to be in the kind of place where your brain is limber, relaxed enough to try things. It's really hard sometimes to be creative just if you've got a bunch of other stuff going on. Probably some sort of whiskers or something. I wanted something that kind of felt feline, at least in the first draft here, and I might try some others. But I'm not necessarily, you know, forcing myself to stay with something feline. If it feels right and I'm seeing something, I'll just go with it. A little bit of a direction change here. Kind of sloping back over the top of the head and looking at this kind of skull shape here. Zygomatic here, and this is the zygomatic arch, so this is really the beginnings of the side of the face and the cheekbone. So I imagine that this is probably going to come down here and then out wider, and then here is the masseter. Side of the jaw is probably pretty strong, and then maybe kind of comes back here. The masseter is going to be on top of this bone here. This is the mandible. So the masseter sits right on the edge of that. It's probably a little bigger than that, but for now I'll stay a little bit closer. Come down. And again, having those bone structures underneath is really informing me a lot. I think there's some sort of ridge to the occipital. This is sort of the frontal bone. And probably all the way up here, but I think I might flatten the head out just a little bit. I like this sort of leaner face. Okay, so then right behind the occipital here, and again, one of the nice things about having the bones available, you can always look right underneath, but looking back here is where the ears, generally the ear canal and the lobes of the ear start to take form. So I'm kind of thinking that it might be worth going to the side at this point, or maybe I could just kind of think maybe some bigger ears, but that might look more dog-like, so I don't know, maybe I need to keep them slightly more triangular. I don't want little clipped ears like on a pit bull. Looks like the ear canal is sort of here. The larger lobes up top. So we'll have to see. Another thing to kind of consider is if the hearing is really good on this animal, that might tell you a lot about what its strengths are. If you want its strengths to be about hearing, or if you want its strengths to be in its eyesight. These are all things that you could maybe choose to tweak and play around with the shapes a little bit. I'm going to go with that for now. You know, I haven't done a lot of cats. I don't specialize in cats, but I've always loved them. Usually a kind of a seam there. Now the lower mouth is probably more gonna come underneath. There's quite a bit of overlap. In fact, I might even bring the jaw down here a little more overlap. So we might see a little bit of the lip. Kind of poking through. Also kind of like the ferocity of the eye, maybe coming down over the top a little bit more. That eye shape just a little bit. It's interesting though, because you don't want it to become too human either. So, and kind of getting a little bit of the animal stare. Starting to happen though. And what's also very challenging is not looking like a person. You know, looking too much like a real life person, and human features have a natural way of kind of coming in there. I think I got to round this out just a little bit more. I think one of the other reasons working graphite is really nice in creatures, if you're going for realism, is that sometimes even your build-up lines give you a little bit of volume, where if you're working in blue and then you're going to go over the top, there's a clear distinction between the blue and maybe a cleaned up graphite line. So I think sometimes it's almost like sculpting. If you're using a little bit of the SketchUp lines that you're using to help mold the dimension that's there. Then it all sort of becomes part of the finished end result, which you could do with the blue as well. It's just that if you're going to summarize and clean up and you want a darker line, you can only go so dark with the animation pencil. So there's a little bit maybe more guesswork in it, but in the end, as you start to see it, or it starts to come out a little bit, that's okay. The sketch lines become part of the finished result. Okay, so that definitely gave it a little bit more cat-like quality. Beefing up the muzzle, a little overlap on the lips. Now, I'm figuring that we had these fangs that were kind of coming out here a little bit. So I kind of think that underneath here we might see a little bit of the tooth come out. This might give it a little bit more of the intimidating kind of creature look. So I could bring the teeth out. Now there's cool factor and there's what makes biological anatomical sense, and it's better when the cool factor also makes sense. In fact, that's part of why I think it's the cool factor happens, is that it seems possible, not just interesting or cool or neat looking, but maybe possible. Now, teeth on the outside would do that. There'd probably be some sort of slight protrusion of the tooth underneath. Just a little bit of change in contour of the lip, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it all just stays tucked under. If it did, then I think the jaw would have to come a little bit wider. I kind of liked the head being a little flatter. I think there's something about that I like. Now, I am not frozen to the bones underneath entirely. They're just a point of departure, so if there's something I want to change, something I want to work with, it's only a point of departure. I don't want to recreate just reality. I am looking for something kind of more interesting. The neck is probably coming up here. Now, depending on the species of feline, some have, whiskers, a lot of whiskers, and have kind of hairy tufts around the edges of the head. In fact, lions specifically do. But whether I want something that's more lion-like, I also think I got to do something with these ears, or more jaguar-like, or puma. This is looking a little bit more puma, jaguar-like, I think. Shorter hair, which I think is what I had in mind, at least on this first draft. But the ears, I think I need to do something with the ears. What could I do? Do I want them longer? Do I want them shorter? Do I want them flatter? think I kind of liked the idea that maybe in this case the ears might go kind of sweeping and back. That's kind of a fun shape. Maybe they start a little lower so that that head sticks up just a little bit. And then maybe a little bit out of here. I like that. Maybe there's sort of a tip. Maybe the ears are slightly folded back in this particular angle. We used to have a Doberman, and she had this little knot right on the top of her head. It's a little high point of her skull that used to just stick up right there. Now, I'm still playing with the forms here. I'm not playing too much with the coat or anything like that. I'm getting the forms first. But I like this. I like this. Something's starting to happen here, which is the magic. This is where the magic happens. I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, how do you get your ideas, or, you know, how do you enjoy being creative, and how do you be creative? I mean, this is what it's all about, to be honest with you. I love great art, and I love making art, and I love drawing, and I love painting, and I love designing, but it's really neat when it all can kind of come together. To where your imagination and your drawing can kind of work together, and you create something new. Alright, it seems like there's going to be mastoids running down the side of the neck, which are probably going to be a little wider than the neck I have. So maybe this thing has a little bit of that kind of ocelot or snowcat. A little bit more tufts of hair. Maybe the whiskers. Maybe it's a little. So before I start hiding the form too much in here, maybe I need to start working my side view. So before I start getting too many decisions and rendering into the final here, or at least, you know, too far along and I'm hiding things under texture, I need to jump to the side view and make sure that I am addressing all of these same things over here. So, again, I have some of my construction lines happening underneath, but I'm going to give myself a few points of reference and draw a few of my lines across so that as I work the side view, I've got some reference points. Big stuff. I would go with like the eyes, maybe the nose, that kind of thing. Oop. Top of the head. And it really doesn't matter. It's just anything to help you figure out where you are view to view. So for me, I'm going to move across, and I can see that my skeletons were probably not 100% in alignment with each other too, and it's okay. This isn't a perfect, you know, cross section. It's just reference lines to sort of help me. All right. All right, take a little sip of coffee here. Coffee on the left. Always coffee on the left. One second. Okay, sorry about the delay there. Just want to make sure my feed was coming through. All right, back at it. So now working the side view. Let's see here. This tells me a little bit about the front. So how far out front am I going to be? So let's see, the nose. I figure the nose is usually the high point, right? Usually the leading with the nose. So I'm figuring the nose is probably coming down. Working a little bit of that jaw. Then we're talking muzzle. It's probably somewhere right up in there. Again, using a little bit of the side view. I don't know how much off to the side I am, but I'm going to slide over just a little bit. A little bit of the nose. So the eye socket here with a little bit of the occipital. Eyes sort of sit back in the head. I have to move that back just a little bit. Figuring that that eyeball is going to sit probably right back in there. So I'm going to move this back just a smidge. And again, this is why the skeleton really helps. You figure that eyeball is sitting back in there. And a little bit of that socket comes underneath for the lower lid, so probably talking someplace around in there. A little bit check against my skull shape underneath. Again, one of the great things about having this underneath as reference is I can sort of see where that eye is sitting in there. I think I'm also a little high on the bridge of my nose, so this is going to be all cartilage in here, so I might be a little bit high. Oh, definitely. See? Checking across. Nostril, nostril. Way too high. Way too high now that I'm looking at it. Which makes sense because my nose is sort of coming here. Front of the nose. Nostril. Probably running back up here. That's probably more like it. Much better. Okay. Now back over the top. And ears are probably coming this direction. Oddly enough, probably running right into the other view of my ear, which is okay. By the way, as far as reference goes, it's this point where if you're feeling comfortable enough with what you have, then at some point you need to leave that reference behind, because you don't want to get too close to real life. If inspiration, anatomy checks, all that good stuff, reference is right on, but you are creating something new. So you do need to leave reference behind at some point. And move into uncharted waters and leave reality 100% behind in favor of finding something kind of new. So I have that jaw behind here, and then I've got the neck kind of probably coming here. So I've got the mandible, probably a little bit more of a curve. Jaw comes back, follows the mandible. The masseter is the big muscle that sits on top of this bone, which would be moving sort of underneath the zygomatic bone and the zygomatic arch, which is on the side of the head here. So this is all muscle masseter, which is for, you know, grinding and chewing. And then the skull, I'm going to bring this slightly back, and then a little bit of that bump here. Keeping in mind my teeth, if I do decide to keep the teeth coming down, might be here. I could maybe bring the lower lip down, but I think I'm kind of thinking that By the way, it looks here like this is my mandible in front of the ear. Our jaws are in front of our ears, so this is the sort of lower lobe of our ear, and then this is that jaw sort of in front, just like on humans. But I think my ear needs to maybe be sitting back a little bit. Seems a little far forward. And I may need to come a little bit lower here too. Maybe there's the ears a little. The idea that it kind of comes out of the occipital right up into there. A little bit of the knot. I like that there's this kind of maybe dip. Got just about enough structure in there. We're going to have several rows of whiskers, maybe longer whiskers. I do kind of like the way these are beginning to look a little bushy. Tooth sticking out. Feels like neck would probably be somewhere in here. Probably figure that there's sternomastoids probably running down the back of the head here. I think I'm a little long here. I'm going to bring this those brows are Maybe someplace in here. This is kind of, should mean this sort of, so sort of a bit of a hollow in here a little bit. A little high, so kind of just checking my proportions. Seems about right. Still pretty kind of lion based, it looks like. I'm seeing more lion here. But I do like the way that this shape is flatter here. And I like the way that maybe those brows, or those lids sort of starting here with a bit of that steeper angle to it. The air intake through the nose. That all looks pretty good. How far up that line comes, I'm not sure. A little bit of the tooth hanging out there. Lips. Still pretty high on that nose. I keep creeping up. Maybe I need to come back a little higher. Maybe that's the way to go. And then I got to bring this up a little bit. Gonna be a little bit of a ridge there. Big sniffer here. I don't know what that says. It could smell really good. Big teeth for canines, meat eater. Strong jaws for tearing. Ears are probably back here. I think the ears kind of come out of that eye shape. And I like that. And there's a little bit of a centerpiece in there. So a little bit of dimension. You could put this slight silhouette of that back ear there. Also maybe a little bit of a goat Lions can have a little bit of this tuft, but maybe we go a little bit longer. It's kind of more hairy. Take off a little bit of the front. So it's, I like this slope. Occipital, frontal, and then that would sort of make the back of the neck behind there, which you can't see too much. So there's this sort of front angle. Sort of an Arctic creature here a little bit. I like that. Gotta have and the whiskers. Bits of whisker there. Maybe slightly villainous. Could be a little tufts of spiky hair along the head. Bits of hair sticking up there. Well, not bad. Maybe little bits of I'm a person with facial hair, so I'm wondering if maybe subconsciously I'm putting more facial hair. It's a little wolf-like. Which I love wolves too. I'm a big wolf fan. I think they're cats and wolves are pretty amazing. Cats and dogs, I guess, huh? he's got to hold on to the cat thing, so I don't know. If he has a hairier muzzle, then maybe the bones around the head don't need to stand out so much. Maybe it's a bit too much, I don't know. Too many points. Seems like it makes a stronger statement to have fewer points than too many points. Okay. So we have our occipitals. We have our tufts ears. We have our stash, or hairier long whiskers on the muzzle. A bit of tufts of hair on the lower portion of the chin. I definitely like this profile here. One of these has to be in front or side, so I think I'm gonna make front. Front view is gonna be in the front. So no confusion here. Ears are in front. Shape of the ear is kind of there. Of course, the ears extend a little longer. Kind of got the mane, but it's a lower mane, but maybe with a little spike that follows along the back. All right, let's go for a little cleanup. A little bit more around the eyes, maybe. Kind of a lid. Brow. Going for some cleanup here a little bit. These ears seem a bit far back. Start a little sooner. All right, now somewhere in here, I am thinking I am probably going to need to switch to 3/4 view. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. So now this is where I think this would probably be worth going into 3/4 view, using little bits of information that's coming from both and putting together what will give me the answer. And it may mean the 3/4 view is going to affect the front view, and it may affect the side view, and that's fine. But sometimes in order to just really understand it, even in your brain, you need to make some sense out of it. So I think, you know, I have these ears kind of back right now, but I understand them from the front and I understand them from the side, more or less, but I'm not quite sure dimensionally how that works. So I need to clean up a little bit of both. In order to really put it together. The other thing is I kind of have these ears back in a more relaxed phase versus maybe at attention, which would maybe put them, you know, up. But I think right now they're more relaxed. But I think 3/4 view will help me answer some of these questions. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my 3/4 skull. By the way, let's just take a quick look at side view versus skull underneath. And how are things lining up? Not bad. I'm looking here, opening a mouth, still falling in about the right spot. The nose might be a little far forward. I might be able to come back a little bit on the nose. But there's a lot of cartilage there, so this is telling me a lot. But I think that that head is going to come back here. So I think somewhere back in here is... But I'm going to move into 3/4 view now. And I'm going to keep this off to the side. And I'm going to pull out another sheet of the marker paper. And I'm going to go ahead and work back in over the top here. Again, I try to tape it in 2 places. You know, you can tape however many works best, but I find that I tend to get less tension on the paper front to back if I tape in 2 places. If you tape in 1 place, it puts a lot of tension as the paper bends. So it's all about sort of keeping the paper relaxed over the top. Okay. So here we go. Kind of keeping this very close by. I'm going to get my 3/4 view adjacent. And I'm going to work over the top. Now, it looks like I got a little bit of the... All right, this should help me get started. Okay. So I've got the middle of my face here, and that's kind of where my seam is going up. And then running straight across, I kind of have that nose somewhere in here. That means this runs to the back. This is kind of running the length of the face. Maybe a little more foreshortening here in the front. Usually the nostril kind of comes around the side. And then we got this running the length. And it looks like I'm going to go over my eye here. on sort of width. And I'm kind of looking eye is probably someplace here. And I'm figuring that that muzzle is probably there with our tooth. If we indeed want to make that tooth stand out, I don't know. But for now, I'm going to put it in there. And then the jaw recedes pretty quickly. Looking back over here, the jaw's kind of coming back with the masseter. A little bit of the lip. Poking through. Skull comes around here. It's kind of sloping up, which means the masseter is sort of, jawline is right there. That eye wrapping around. Figure that this is the side of the head wrapping around. A little bit of dimension. Then that's all going to drop. Now this is interesting. So I'm looking at the width of zygomatic bone is pretty high there. So there's kind of a high cheekbone right here sticking out there, so there's dimension of the eye right there. So I'm maybe a little high. Maybe I need to come a little bit lower. And then that's the brow. And then that kind of comes up. So there's your occipital, which is really here. And then those ears, probably going to come up here. A little bit of that crest, apex. This is sort of upper lip over lower lip, side of the mouth skin, which is sort of connecting here. So masseter is sort of I don't have to stick to that, but I am getting a little bit of a protrusion there. Which means this is kind of a a high point. A little bit of a high point. Makes this kind of hollow. This is a bit of a hollow spot right there. Here's the zygomatic, the high cheekbone here, the eye socket, the orbital. So this is a bit of a soft hollow pocket in the cheek. Which is going to be sort of here. A little bit soft there. So a little bit soft in the cheek here. Sorry I'm not more talkative tonight. It's a little bit late. Bit of a beard. And of course we have our whiskers. And our nose. Cheek. Okay. Top of the eye. So I'm assuming that the ear would maybe do something like that. Maybe a little higher. Just kind of moving back. It's almost a little puppy dog ears a little bit. Not quite cat ears. That's all right. Behind the jaw. And up to the ear. A little bit of tufts in front of the ear. This might be a little far forward. I like that. The occipital into the front. All right. Looking pretty good, pretty good. So again, I'm just checking back all three. I realize maybe some of this is off screen for you guys, but we've got 3/4 to front, we've got front to side. So kind of merging the three of these together. And I think ultimately, as long as you're keeping your lines relatively close proximity to each other, you can use some straight edges to help line you up. I'm going to bring back in my ruler here for a second. I'll clean up here. I'm going to draw a few reference lines, elevation lines, just to make sure I'm staying close. Relative location. bottom of the nose line here, which I'm also realizing I'm a little off here. I gotta go a little higher on my nose. Let's go top of the nose line. Again, trying to keep my nose relatively level. Coming back up to my eyeline. I realize I am not high enough on my eyes. Too low. Too low. He's got to come up a little bit more. Top of the eye ridge. Just sort of here. Eye ridge, start of the ear is somewhere right in there. And then maybe top of the head is here, which I'm a little high there also. All right, a little bit of correcting to do, but it's giving me some help to keep myself in check. So I'm a little high here. Bring that back down. Oh, while I'm at it, should probably check in and do the ear height. Again, good reason to keep yourself close. Gotta correct a little bit. But it's happening. I'm seeing it. I'm starting to see it. This is where the fun is. Because you really watch something start to take shape here. Now again, I have divorced myself from following the references now. So I am, in some respects, I am off the charts, creating my own. It's a little uneasy sometimes not knowing exactly where you are, but if you've done some study, you have your references nearby, it's okay. You're all right. Just checking my relative elevations here. This is good there. Good there. Pretty close. This could maybe come up a little higher. Cheekbone's way out here. So my eye needs to sit a little bit above this, so that works pretty good, following my eye socket there. I'm in a good place relative to the socket, so I think everything is looking pretty good. I'm a little higher here in the socket. That might have just been variances in the two skulls, but I'm close. whiskers coming up the side. Might not see so much whisker over there. And then maybe some of those tufts of hair, which we're doing up here. This might be a little tall. Makes me think of a little bit of a hyena. That kind of hair standing up on the back of the head gives them a little bit of that kind of crazy look. Okay. Pulling things apart just a little bit. Working on my jawline behind the zygomatic. Zygomatic is probably, see, my jaw's here, the muscles there, it's probably right behind there. Cheekbone comes down a little bit. You know, I never really realized how much those cheekbones in felines are so pronounced. But boy, you start working these dimensions and you can see it all over the place. There's a little bit of the hollow. There's the socket, so there's going to be some soft tissue. Probably lower lid. I need to check something really quick. Masseter is underneath there. This connects the side of the head. And then kind of comes up. This goes into the neck. Center line. Always important to maintain your center line so you know the divide left or right. Also kind of watching for the axis curvature. Back of the neck, probably thicker here. Head, thicker neck. With a little bit of that tufts of fur. Not bad. Not bad. We're getting there. We're getting there. Some lines I don't want to be too hard, and they need to kind of pull together. The ear is kind of going to start below. And then this is the tufts of hair inside the ears. And then the skull's kind of coming up, but I don't want that line to be too hard. Cheekbone, it just has to imply that it comes sort of behind the... So let's check a couple places. So my eyes are okay. Ears start somewhere in there, maybe a little thicker. Eyeline's okay. Nose needs to come up. Nose is too low. Let's bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Okay, follow that center line. Top of the nose. Side of the nose. Probably need to bring the mouth up a little bit as well then. Which do you like better, cats or dogs? Can't tell. Sometimes cats, sometimes dogs. Well, maybe this will be a combination of the best of both. It's a big nose like a dog. This thing looks like it could probably sniff great distances. Ears are kind of flatter, but at the same time curving far enough back here. Need a little bit of help with the 3/4 view with jaw into head. So yeah, it looks like most of these cats like this, it just becomes kind of round here, wide and round. And I think that's what makes it a little less like a dog. A dog is a little more pointy, a little more boxy, a little more square. A cat's got that rounded snout. but we're going to put a little bit of the hair here, hair here. A little bit of that tooth kind of sticking out there. There's some whiskers, whisker action. Maybe it even kind of comes longer. Could be like a tabby. Tabbies kind of have longer whiskers. Some lines at the face, over the eyes. Not bad. Line here in the center. Probably not come out that far. A little bit of that lower lip. Sense of fur kind of coming down in the front there. All right. Okay, the only part of this thing that to me feels a little bit unresolved would maybe be just middle of the neck is probably going to be here. So we can thicken up the chest just a little bit. It's very dog-like here, so I think one thing that's going to have to be very important is to keep these round. That roundedness makes the cat, makes the kitty. Too square and it looks dog-like, so gotta keep that. Three-quarter view. I think I'm sticking too close to the skull here. I think in the end this needs to be lower. And I'm seeing that now. I think this ridge is perhaps a little high. And again, they're all in a state of flux. You know, maybe in the next version this is not so high. But I think that this ridge is perhaps be a little lower, and maybe this comes a little lower. but it seems like it could work. Teeth are a lot bigger. Okay. Is this a werewolf? Is this a kitty wolf? All right. So, I think we have our head in position here. And I think the last thing I'm going to do is to maybe work in a little bit more of this side ear. I'm going to move my head a little bit over here. And I'm checking my lines. And everything looks pretty lined up. But I'm checking. My brow is probably somewhere right up in there. That's feeling a little better. And we've got ear kind of starting jaw behind the ear, kind of continuing on up there. Head skull shape moves through here, back, and then I don't know if you can see this as well, but here, back. And it becomes to take sort of a backward Well, I think this is just about reached the end of this one, folks. I'm trying to keep these down a little bit. They get to be marathons. And I know I've got to get myself to bed. And if you are up late watching this, get to bed. It's only us dads that are running the late night streams. No, that's not true, actually. I know quite a few streams that are running pretty late. So, again, I apologize for the bit of lateness. For those that might be catching this live out there, and I have been trying to find a time where I can stream a bit more regularly, but things have gotten a little crazy for me. So for now, I will continue to say that I'm most likely going to be streaming sometime around Friday night, Saturday, or Sunday nights. And I'm trying to figure out the right time. So the best thing you can do is probably subscribe, and then you get notified when I'm going live. You can catch me then, and I try to put a ping out when I'm live. But, you know, it's kind of tough to catch people for sure who don't know. So you can catch this, again, if you're watching this on YouTube. This goes up first on Twitch, at my Twitch art stream with Trey Gallaher. And you can just find me at Twitch at Trey Gallaher. And then after it comes down from there, it goes archive to YouTube, and you can check out my YouTube channel, and that's at YouTube, Trey Gallaher. Instagram at Trey Gallaher. Facebook, Art by Trey Gallaher. And of course the website, treygallaher.com. Feel free to make any comments. If you have any questions about anything, I'd be glad to try and answer them in the comments section. I have a Discord channel space up. I'm not using it much in tandem with the stream yet, but I probably will at some point. It's just a question of when will that actually happen. So, you know, for now, you know, leaving comments here or at YouTube, and I'll try to get back to you if you have any questions or anything like that. I'm figuring somewhere up in the head here, I'm going to be having some stripes. And I like the idea of these stripes kind of moving towards like a center line, which, you know, the tiger and even the tomcat has some stripes that come up, so I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to give some idea here. I imagine there'll be sort of lines These little stripe lines might help describe the contour as these things are sort of wrapping around. But at this point I want to hold on to the forms before I get too descriptive. Figuring something's going to come in from the side, or something at the top of the head, something kind of following these ridges. So you can see the socket here is going to have a little bit of an indicator, maybe somewhere along the cheek, tops of the eyes, and then the center line sort of mirroring this stuff. Yeah, I can begin to add more textures and tone as I go, to give it a little bit more dimension. I'm just going to finish here polishing up crisping up a few more of these lines and give me some cleanup so I can begin to see this when I come back. I think, you know, if not in the next couple days, for sure next week or at the end of this week, I'll probably pick up on this again. But I wanted to continue a little bit of work on this. A little bit of that short hair. I'm looking a little bit at the location of my stripes. I'm not going to go super heavy at this point, but some stripes there. I'm thinking maybe coming up a little bit on the jaw here. little bit. All right. Just giving some indication, location of some markings. Maybe coming around on the cheek. A bit higher up by the eye, maybe. I'm not exactly sure where, but I'm picturing something. Going into the shoulder blade. We're going to the back of the scapula there. Cervical vertebra, scapula, into the shoulder. So not a real long neck, but all right, folks, not bad for a rough first concept. Now again, this is one, right? This is one. 3 views, 1 design of the head. So you don't like it, you do another one, you want another version, many as you want to do. I'm working up 3 views. I don't always work so thorough in terms of building up this many views, but again, this is something that I'd probably put a little more thought into in this one. Time is on my side. You don't always have time, but obviously more thought, more study makes better designs. If you're working, under deadline for the client, hopefully if they know more what they want, you spend less time exploring. But if it's purely your design, then maybe you have a little more time to get the thing that you want, the design that you're looking for. But I think one of the jobs of doing concept design work or design of any type, whatever that design may be, by the way, it's about exploration, solutions. And the only way you know if you have a good solution is if you've tested it, tried things, explored it a little deeper. Going with your first instinct is sometimes the wrong one. Our input that's in our brain comes from all the things we've ever seen, and for the most part we've all seen a lot of the same stuff, so first ideas are always the same for everybody, unless it's something you've been thinking about for a very long time. Then you kind of almost have to throw out your first ideas. And all right, so we got front, we've got side, we've got 3/4. All right, well, a penciled rough, one concept. Pretty good, I think. Maybe one last possible step here is to throw in a little tone, a little gray. So you could work up a little bit of marker. I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of Copic just to put some shadows in a few places. So I'm thinking this is more of a villain, but an organic creature. So I think I'm gonna use my warm gray, and I'm gonna start out with just 10% to kind of create a little bit of form, to drop a few places. Places that I know might have a bit more form in them. Dimensionally, I'm thinking a little bit about under the jaw here, just to bring out a little bit of this jaw, a little bit maybe under the ear. major shadows. I'm not too concerned about patterning. I'm not too concerned about color or value at this point. It's about form. So I'm trying to put a little bit of shadow that might emphasize form a little bit. Just some quick stuff. Cheekbones that we were talking about. Maybe the inside of the eye, I'll give that bridge a little bit of a steeper value. I'm not going with much darker than 10%, mostly because I also have some graphite, so the graphite's going to merge, you know, a little bit with the marker, so I don't want to go too dark at this point. I'm just trying to bring out a little sense of dimension. So I'm just throwing a little bit of marker. Just giving a little bit of contrast. All right, I'm calling it. We will catch you guys on the next stream. Check in again. Usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Usually in the late evenings, maybe in the mornings, but subscribe and you'll know when I'll pop up next. But check back in a couple days, and hope you're out there following your passions. Keep up with your drawing. Enjoy what you do. Be true to what you do. Follow your heart, follow your passions, and draw as much as you can. Have a good evening.